Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order this Caledonia Community Schools Board of Education meeting for August 8th. If you would all please rise for the pledge. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. Thank you for all of you being here tonight. Please make sure if you are speaking for public comment or for any of us up here at the head table that your microphone is on and that we can hear you so that the recording does pick up all voices. Try to stop somebody if you can't hear them though, please. If you are here and going to speak for public comment, we do ask that you fill out one of these cards, and it does ask for your personal information on there. That is to follow up for contact as needed. You're allowed 3 minutes to speak on a topic, and at that time, we ask that you please do address your comments to the board, and the board as a whole. No personnel issues with that, and we will then provide follow-up as appropriate. At this time, we are going to have roll call.
Point of information.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a reason why the board member comments are missing?
I have it in front of me as number 8. Oh, board member comment? We have board reports. It's under 7C. I'm sorry, I thought you said public comments.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Could we please have roll call?
Asper here. Barbara Garcia.
Here.
Isich.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
Sadu.
Here.
White.
Here. Thank you. We move on to number 4, our consent agenda. We have the July 25th, 2022 minutes and the August 2022 personnel report.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Have a second? Thank you. Are there any corrections, questions on those reports? No? Can we have roll call, please?
Asper, yes. Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Isich. Morris.
Yes.
Sadu.
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. We will go to 5, reports and information. We have expanding, enhancing emotional health with Mrs. Dubison.
Thank you. As you are familiar, communicating throughout the course of the year and even prior years regarding this grant through the Department of Health and Human Services. This year, we were in collaboration with Arbor Circle awarded that grant and are excited about that new partnership. The reason it's being presented to you tonight is that the grant requires that we have a public documentation of the grant and partnership. So it needs to appear either on a board agenda or in the minutes. So we just wanted to make sure that we met that requirement of the grant. We are excited to, like I said, partner with Arbor Circle and are currently looking for a provider to continue just to help us meet the mental health needs of our students.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions at this time? Tim?
Can you remind us how long the grant is?
The initial grant was awarded through the end of September, but Arbor Circle has consistently been renewed for those grants, and so that will be renewed, and we will continue to communicate that with the board.
Thank you. Any additional questions on that grant? Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move to our 6th discussion items. We have the student handbooks with Ms. Perkowski.
Yes, on August 1st at the Curriculum and Learning Committee, we reviewed the student handbook changes that were made as an annual review of student handbooks. So we'll go through those rather quickly as these have already been approved. This was through the Policy Committee from March 29th. And just an update and revision on long-term suspension on the hearings. The changes that were made on the 29th of March were that suspensions up to 5 days are appealed to the principal with a decision final. Suspensions over 5 days are appealed to the superintendent's decision final. Suspensions over 10 days can be appealed up to the Board of Education level, and all appeals must be received within 2 days of the suspension. The recommended change was being to reflect current practice of superintendent discipline hearing with appeal to the board as shown in the linked versions. Again, this was part of policy back in March, so it's just more of a reminder. And we also had a change to the non-public transfer credits. So the last sentence in the policy was removed, and that was just to align with current policy, or sorry, with current practice, both here and around the region for high schools. So those changes will be reflected in the high school handbook. In terms of the middle school, there were no policy recommendations this year. There was just a lot of cleanup of language to better align with policy and with the high school so that we had some consistency across the board. So those are linked there, and those were in the board report. Again, no policy changes, just more verbiage. And at Craft and the elementaries and early childhood center, there were no policy recommendations or changes other than that we have been working to try to be a lot more consistent across the board with all practices and all the elementaries. While there are nuances to each building, most of the practices and protocols, are consistent, or we're working toward that. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll go to 6B, which is high school social studies. We have Dr. Trober and Ms. Perkowski to kick that off.
I think I'll take this on. At the last Curriculum and Learning Committee, we talked about the ongoing process to adopt new social studies resources. Starting back in the early part of the calendar year, we went through 4 different vendors, invited them in, and asked that they supply us with materials. From that, we chose two to go forward with a pilot. And from the pilot, we then selected one eventual resource. The process in more full, if you can put that slide up there, Mrs. Zoet. The social studies team consists of those different departments at the end of that slide, and I do have some teachers with me representing the social studies department to talk through the process from their lens. But you see essentially what we try to do is make sure that we try to fit the resource with the grade level content expectations, which are the standards that are adopted by the state. The next slide shows not only the timeline specifically, but then the last adoption process as well. And so you see referenced there different years associated with aspects or components of social studies. And you see that some of the resources, it's been quite some time since we've officially adopted anything at the board level. Concerning, of course, we want to make sure that we are up to date with what we are teaching. And so again, I'll have representatives from the social studies department come on up. And as they do, know that the timeline is up there on the top of that slide. In addition to what's not noted up there is the timeline that we had for review. And the materials, for the most part, have been on display since June 21, with the exception of 2 materials, and those have since been incorporated into the display. The timeline was therefore lengthened to fit the time period which we have referenced in the past, according to our ongoing processes. So, team, go ahead and come on up here, and I'll have the social studies team introduce themselves and talk through what they went through as a part of the pilot process and what they saw from the students as well.
Hello. My name is Patience Ewell. I am one of the social studies teacher here at CHS. So first of all, thank you for having us and letting us kind of come talk to you today about the process. To give you a little background, as we spoke last week, when we bought books in 2008, I was a second-year teacher, and world history is what we went through. The process for that was literally, we're going to sit in a classroom. Our whole department was there. We had 2 book reps come in. They gave us their material. It was very quick, like, here's the options. And within 24 hours, we kind of had to select what one we were going with. So it was very limited, if you want to even call that a process. So that was kind of the last experience. So we were very, very appreciative. to the involvement that our whole department got to be a part moving through this resource. And obviously you can see it's been a bit since we've had resources. So we've been really on our own kind of just piecemealing and spending an awful lot of time making sure that the resources that we were finding, whether it's online or other book resources, did meet our content standards. So the opportunity to get a new resource department-wide to get us all more cohesive as well, we were really excited about that. So I'll let Mrs. Naraki talk a bit about the process itself.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Naraki, Gina Naraki. I teach social studies at the high school. I'll be going into my 25th year this coming school year. And I really appreciated the process that we went through. In the past, I can say that we never had dedicated time during the school day, so that really showed us that how important the process was, that we could all get together during the day to go through that textbook, navigating through all the textbooks and seeing which ones, kind of narrowing them down. And the fact that it was, we had a very structured agenda. So in the past, I'm going to be perfectly honest and say that the process was not so structured, and we often did that process through our time after school. So we really appreciated that.
My name is Jenny Yonkman. I've been teaching at Caledonia since 2009, and I'm a lifelong resident and current resident. I want to add just the process that we went through recently with the 4 resources. So we were able to work with the ISD, which had not been done before, and the ISD was able to help us guide the teachers through the 4 resources. From the 4 resources, then we were able to narrow it down from 2 as a social studies team. As a social studies team, then we were able to take those 2 resources and actually use them in our classroom and see how it worked with students. And we also were able to get student feedback, which had not been done in the past. From there, we were then able to collaborate as a team and say, out of the 2 resources that we narrowed it down, where are we at as a social studies team? And the decision was unanimous. And just for perspective, we geographically are not all together in the building. We will be next year. So we are not every day able to quickly speak with one another on how the process is going. So to come back as a team and be unanimous is where we ended up on 1 resource. And that was our process from there. But this time we were able to actually bring it into the classroom and actually teach lessons, which had not been done in the past.
So that's kind of how the process went for us. Do you guys have any questions?
Tim?
It was a structured approach. Can you document on how you walk through the?
Yep. So, led in conjunction with the ISD consultant, they walked us through a process they've used in the past, a process they use currently, but essentially after every week, we were able to get feedback from not only teachers, but also the students in response to the lessons and or resources that were utilized.
So is that a document that could be supplied? Is there a document?
There is, yep. And I believe that the questions that were noted as a part of that were actually a part of the board packet.
The curriculum and learning committee meeting packet, we did get that information. Yes.
I missed that. I apologize. So when you were evaluating this, how many publishers were looked at?
Initially, there were 4. From the 4, we narrowed it down to 2. And with those 2, we piloted and then pursued the one that we recommended with Savas.
What was the deciding factor? That it was unanimous.
Yeah, that's. I'll let the teacher speak to that.
Well, for the students themselves, they were unanimous in picking Savas as well. And so they are very honest when they're giving their opinions about things. So, but I really appreciated their feedback because they are ultimately, they're the ones that are going to be using the textbooks. For Savas, they really like the interactive components. And I think because a lot of the questions were more relevant for them, like the essential questions. So for me, I was piloting the world history book, and we were currently on the Cold War. So the essential question for them was, how should we handle conflict? So even though the topic might be something historical, the questions were relevant to their lives. So one thing for me as a teacher, what I appreciated about the textbook were the primary sources, because those are very important, and oftentimes it takes a lot of time to look for those primary sources and look for good ones. So I appreciated that they seem to have a really good set for the Cold War, and it was something that the kids also found very interesting. It was on popular culture, and it talked about things like McDonald's opening up in the Soviet Union. It talked about different bands, like popular bands at the time, and I think it was like Pink Floyd, Alice Cooper, and how the Soviet Union were trying to ban the Soviet Union from being able to hear Western music. And another topic was the hockey rivalry. So I just think it had a lot of things that really interested the kids, so I think that helped to sway their opinion.
I'd like to kind of add to a little bit with that. So all the extras that Savas was able to provide. So when we did create our rubric, which is what was, I think, provided, and that was what we answered each week, and that's what we used to kind of go through and narrow it to the two. It's not just the book. There's so much more now that goes into resources that we use all the time. The accessibility of the Savas book just links right into our Google Classroom. So like for us, that was a very simple process. I didn't do it with my students, that piece of it, just because I didn't want to do that part. You did. And it seemed pretty easy. So that's one thing I know moving forward we were looking for, is how accessible can we make this moving forward in the digital age. Another thing that I really appreciated was when I asked the book rep if she could send me the Michigan content standards. She was able to do that I just asked for world history and U.S. history because of the two classes that I taught. And it was right there. So it did help me it provided a roadmap, if you will, to what we do teach and where I can find it and how I do that. So that was very, very convenient. Any other questions?
Yeah, any other?
Not really a question, but just wanted to say thank you again for coming on a Monday morning very early and to the curriculum meeting. So I just wanted to say thank you again.
It was nice. It was refreshing to come in and go through textbooks and to see the new textbooks. And I can understand why the kids and why you're looking forward to them when you realize what you've been working with. And so, it was a pleasure to go through that. But we appreciate you coming to committee meetings, the information and the time that you've spent helping to inform on the process, as well as your thoughts on it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a couple more questions for Mr. Trump.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So in the Finance and Operations Committee, you had some questions about the book numbers, numbers that were on the order. I just want to make sure that is the case and not just number from the books that was sent from Savas, that it matches what we're buying, that was viewed in the public review process.
Yeah, so specifically you're talking about the ISBN numbers, and the ISBN numbers are what references a particular book. We have been supplied with the ISBN numbers. I have checked the ISBN numbers, and the ISBNs that were on display are in fact what we will be purchasing.
I know after the meeting I looked and there were 4 that were not lining up with manifest.
So the information that I've been forwarded indeed does match. So I can go back and I can show you that if you'd like.
I'm just going off what was provided to the board in last month's packet. So want to make sure we're getting what we buy and that we didn't view books that weren't purchased.
No, in fact, there was a book that was, I think, going to be adopted by Savas in their upcoming revisions that they go through as a part of their own company, but we are not pursuing that text. We're pursuing the text that was previously aligned to what we had seen, to what we had previewed, to what we are comfortable with. So I'm not sure if that's what you are referencing or not.
I'm referencing what was provided in the board packet, which had the quote and had the numbers.
So just to bring some clarity to that, I think, or at least I felt like we addressed it, that it was brought up that there was a question about, is the ISBN number consistent to what we're ordering? Since that board packet, we did go back to confirm that what we have out for display is what we order, and that was, and that also coincided to the same time that 2 books that were missing. We got those 2 books. We put those out for display, and then in full transparency, we decided to extend the process for the community or the board or anyone who felt like coming to view those textbooks. We extended that process so that they had ample time to come in and view that. So we do acknowledge that for whatever reason, that was not consistent at one board meeting, but I want to make it clear that since you brought that to our attention, we did go to make sure that the numbers are consistent. That was brought up at the curriculum committee meeting, and we discussed that those numbers are consistent, what we expect to order, and we extended the time frame to make sure that anyone who wanted to come out to view that could.
And I would just say, if there is a disruption in any way that we are not comfortable, then we would, of course, treat that like anything else. We'd go back out. We'd make sure that we got what we were comfortable with.
What do you mean by that?
So if, in fact, we attempted to order a resource and we were not favorable toward that resource, we would retract that and make sure we got the information that we were comfortable with.
There's I have some concern about the publisher and responsive learning advisory board members. There's controversial individuals on there. Billings, Ladding's Billings is a bit of a well, she mentions that color blindness should be ignored. There's a bit of a racial concern that I have. She's an activist in her field, and just concerned that that type of philosophy is reaching our children. Concerned as a board member who represents the community, and want to get your on where you I with her.
Well, let me maybe address that, and you can. I think a lot of the things that I've been hearing regarding Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings and the affiliation with CRT, I think in a lot of ways I'm a little concerned that maybe it's not fully informed. There's some content out there if people choose to read the primary source, such as her book and her writings itself, instead of maybe just something that's put on social media, but certainly not gone through the rigors of peer-reviewed by researchers, considered as valid. I think if you go through that process, if you read some of her text, in a lot of cases, what she is talking about, quite honestly, is equity and raising the question on historically, questioning why we see maybe underperformance for African American students. But regardless of whether she sits on the board or not, I think the big concern that I think we need to pay attention to, sitting on the board and actually writing the text that we're asking the board to consider, is two different things. She is not, I'm not aware that she's an author of the Savas textbook. The other thing is we have heard a lot of concerns from a few community members, but a lot of those concerns were not specific to the actual things in the text. They were more broad-based and more general. So I want to say it's important for us to be mindful, to acknowledge, to investigate and see if there are some things that are questionable in terms of the content we're asking to adopt, and maybe separating out the two. Because if someone wants to say, well, I disagree with Caledonia Community Schools because one person sit on the board and I don't like their opinion, I don't think that they should view the entire school and the school system as a whole as inappropriate because they disagree with a person who may or may not write the curriculum or teach our students in the class. I do feel comfortable with what teachers have gone through and have vetted. You know, when you look at our teachers collectively, you're talking 75 plus years of experience teaching this content. I do feel that our teachers have the professional expertise that if they see something, regardless of new or past curriculum, that if they felt that it was inappropriate, they would either, one, make an informed decision and let their administrator or curriculum department know so that we can address that, omit that, change that. We have a policy that has long held in our district in terms of if there is questionable content and a parent or a student felt like they needed something different, we can create an alternative assignment. But I do feel pretty comfortable that the people who are actually using the resources did a good and thorough job vetting it. I think they are probably intelligent enough to understand what would probably be appropriate for kids at the level that they instruct at. And if we find something that is inappropriate, I think we have to deal with it. But I'm not sure if I make the same leap of faith or distrust that a member who sat on the board but was not the actual author doesn't have the expertise to at least sit on the board and give their opinion to a company, and that becomes the sole impetus to adopt or not adopt a curriculum. Because I think when you look at that, any textbook that is broad-based and cover a substantial topic or period of time is likely going to have dozens, if not hundreds, of authors. And I think we'll be in a situation where we'll never adopt a textbook because we adopted a math curriculum. They had multiple authors, and we've had some people question that math, science, technology, it's all related to Marxism. The question becomes, in that book, specifically, where the objectionable point should not be based on, I disagree because I don't like this person sitting on that board for their personal or political view. The content from what we received, I didn't see much objection to the content. I see more objection based on the person sitting on the board. And I think for the board, us as educators, we all need to be mindful of what is the content that we're exposing our kids to. Making a decision on something that weighty, because my concern, and I'm sorry for getting long-winded, but my concern would be that we have allowed our teachers or put them through the challenge of spending a lot of extra time trying to search critical primary sources to teach from. When you have multiple teachers dealing with hundreds of kids and the time frame that it takes to do that in a sound, methodical way, what you also allow is the opportunity for a bad actor, if you will. And I'm not calling our teachers bad actors, but you allow the opportunity for them to teach things that we would quite honestly not approve of potentially because they're working with materials that hasn't been vetted since 1990. So they have no choice but to go out and find secondary materials. And in a lot of cases, I can say from a research perspective, people go to the first couple hits on the internet and say, I did my research. But from a truly academic standpoint, in a lot of cases, that is not high quality research. And our children need to know the difference.
But how is that much different than what we have now, where we don't have any in this program? We have no oversight on where they go on the links, other than maybe NPR, MSNBC is doing the fact checking. And is that going to change? It can change without us even knowing it. So I'm just concerned about what we're putting in front of our kids and that it matches with the community.
I would say that first of all, just in understanding and eons ago being a teacher myself, as far as where a kid can go on their internet or something, that is endless, and we see that all the time. As far as the teacher following a lesson plan that should be based on the standards that they're required to teach through the state of Michigan, and then finding curricular resources and content that matches up to those standards. Part of that is quite honestly, it's the art form of teaching. And a good teacher, I don't care what textbook you adopt, a good teacher is going to look at some of this and say, that is spot on, and it gave me the resources I need, and it was done in a way that the kids could grasp the content, because the most important thing is the learning. A good teacher would also look at something and say, you know what, I like this book, but for this particular lesson, this particular unit, it is shallow. It doesn't hit the points that we need. It doesn't bring enough outside resources. And let me go and find that. Let me consult with a colleague and find the resources so that I can provide those. But all of that becomes the expertise of the classroom instructor. But I think what we're trying to do is give our teachers more tools to make their job a little bit easier, a little bit accessible, bring our curricular in this particular area, advance it at least 2, in some cases 3 decades forward, so that they don't spend an inordinate amount of time trying to go out and find content because they're working with a textbook from the 90s or a textbook from the 2000s. I do think that I don't care who write a textbook. I do think there's going to be a time where someone finds something like, maybe there should be something better, but I think that's the art of teaching, and that's where I have faith and trust that our teachers will either A, make the right decision. If it is questionable for a parent or a student or a teacher, there's a process in place to which they can select not to teach this because we feel it's not appropriate and move on. But in terms of if a teacher doesn't present it as part of their lesson plan, but a kid decide to go the extra effort because they agree or disagree or want to find an alternative view, whether it's through Savas or whether it's through just going to the world of the internet, we want the opportunity with more relevant materials to help our kids be critical thinkers, to try to discern what is a good resource, what is opinion versus fact-based, what is a primary resource, and help and give the teachers the tools they need to guide those conversations in a critical way. When you look at what our students and what our teachers have been able to do, whether it's the past or the current, our teachers, our district have done a phenomenal job academically moving the ball forward, and we haven't always given them the support they need. I think in this case, this has given them more tools so that they can be more effective and continue to do the good job. The fact that we have 4 teachers who have been doing this for decades, I think that's a pretty valid resource in itself to really critically look at some of this, if this is a good curriculum. So I'm sorry to get a little passionate, but a long time ago, I used to be a curriculum director. I'll do that again.
I think it's great that we do have a curriculum. I want that structure and I want that flexibility that makes this teaching the curriculum flexible with the teacher, and I appreciate their discretion in a way that reflects the community too. I just, when you say that, people like the advisory board, they're there for a reason, and they're not there because they're not influencing some of this text. So be naive not to think that. So
If I could just jump in and say one thing. The objective stated up there on that slide up there is the process that we started with, the process that we finished with. And what I mean by that is we invited the ISD in because they have a bigger lens than what we do in Caledonia. And so they have a what I would term as a best practices process. And the initial step they led us through was not looking at the vendors themselves or the resources, but it was a matter of going back and reacquainting ourselves with what the grade level content expectations are, the standards. And so we facilitate the resource always by the standard. And so if there's a depth of knowledge regarding the standards, the teachers are able to cross-reference and check what's appropriate and what isn't. And so I have a great deal of confidence in their expertise and them knowing the instructional practices and the standards to the degree they need to really assess that resource and facilitate the information necessary to get across what it is that the content expectations expect.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Brittany?
But I
Sure.
would just add, at the Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting, we did have an opportunity to hear from the teachers as well at that time, and they did talk. I was going to mention kind of exactly what you said, that they were able to review the content standards and expectations for the state and match them up really clearly and directly with the curriculum that was offered in this resource. And so that gives us good faith in the consistency that our students are going to be receiving and the education that they're going to be receiving. And they felt that this resource was also, and we pushed on this, as free from bias as one can expect. And I think their commitment to that was actually very, very obvious in the fact that they were looking for the primary sources in particular. So to me, that shows that they were all very committed to that practice and teaching those critical thinking skills. I wanted to thank you for that, because that showed that dedication to what you were doing and the commitment you're making to our students. So thank you.
I think with all boards, the boards aren't put in place because they're all knowledgeable about everything. We weren't elected to these positions because of our experience in picking curriculum. That's why we have our experts, our teachers, our administration that have been through this. And you go through this process, you know what your standards are. You very carefully, clearly went through this. I look around the room at teachers that are currently working and retired. And I have sat with probably most all of them at some point in time with all of my children. And I trust our staff to do what is right. All of my kids were very well prepared leaving high school to go on to their next level. There's nothing that I can say that wouldn't put me in that space of trust with them. I trust if the fact that they come along curriculum that they're not comfortable with, or a section they're not comfortable with, that they know, who to go to, that they weed out what they need to weed out. And I appreciate the time and the expertise that you all put into this, and thank you very much for this process. And I look forward to having new books in front of our kids if this curriculum passes. So thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to 6C, which is our Dutton Elementary Bid Pack 2 with Mr. Hess.
Good evening. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we brought to you the project start for our Cal Community Center, and this evening we are bringing to you hopefully our project start continuation. Let's start digging a hole in the ground for the new Dutton Elementary School. I will start with saying if you did print this, there is a math error on the form. If you are using the online version, it is correct. I would point out that on page 2, the total project estimated cost was printed at $30,549,984. It's actually $30,299,448. So we start this presentation with saving $250,000. Woo! All right, onto the project here. Bid Pack 1 passed the Board of Education back in March. That was securing the scheduling and delivery of the precast concrete construction system. A bid opening for Bid Pack 2, which had excellent bid response. I would point out as a note that there are many school districts in the state that have had 0 bid responses, and we had a very long bid opening because we had excellent bid responses in every category. There were no single bidders. So that's a great sign that we had a good project in place. We are presenting this budget as, to be honest, I believe a high estimate. I say that because we are still evaluating prices, we are still evaluating long-term bid results, and we are still evaluating what we call value engineering. That is the art of taking every item and looking at it and saying, how can we do this faster? How can we do it cheaper? How can we do it better? One of the cases I would present is that we've replaced a great number of the copper wiring with aluminum wiring. Aluminum is currently 1/2 the price of copper. It's also perfectly standard. Aluminum wiring is perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly up to code. It just happens to be a significant amount cheaper. So we're actively looking at reducing the number that you see here. Another example would be in the memo from Plant Moran. Number 1, we're carrying $1 million for the completion of the Caledonia Township water main. Our portion of that will not be $1 million. However, at this point, we don't know if the other investors are on board, and we certainly need water to open a school. So we're carrying more of that cost than we will end up eventually paying. So there are some things in here that are riding a bit high on the dollar figure, and there are actively every day, every hour, things that are coming in cheaper and better. So that's where we are. Again, the total cost right now is approximately $30,299,448. The budget for this project was $21 million. So we are, yes, significantly over budget. It was something we talked about today, and we're sharing some information, and we're looking forward to sharing with you in September and October steel costs alone, which accounts for a great deal of more than just structural construction. It accounts for wiring, it accounts for plumbing, it accounts for, you name it. Everything is involved with steel. You know, the AC, the air conditioning ducting, the heating ducting, it's all steel. And that is up currently, I believe I printed that out at 96.5% from 2021 to 2022 second quarter. That's a huge increase. So at this point, we're looking at the fact that we're about 40% over budget, and we're glad for it. We're glad we made the pivot away from steel construction, even though it delayed us. We definitely have saved a lot of money in just construction and availability of construction materials. And with that, are there any questions?
Microphone, did you have something you needed to add?
Well, I was going to add, but I'll maybe wait to see what the questions are.
Okay. Tim, did you?
So what are what are we doing to keep the costs down with runaway inflation and material cost skyrocketing?
At this point, we are locking in contracts. Once we say yes here, Crispin will move to lock in these contracts. Most of them are carrying anywhere from 7-day to 15 and 30-day expirations. And they're holding them through this week so that we can lock these contracts in. We lock these contracts in, these are our prices. If we have the benefit of somehow and suddenly prices start going down, we also benefit from that. Crispin is structuring their contracts to take advantage of savings that anywhere we can.
What about moving forward? Are there any costs that we got to be concerned about increasing after the bid pack's approved?
We hope not. There is no bid pack 3. There are a few minor addendums out there that will change costs a little bit, but at this point, these are our major fixed costs. At this point, really and truthfully, from this number, I believe it can only go down. Hold on to that one. So, yeah, that's where we are.
Jason.
Where did we land on the driveways for Dutton?
This plan, this bid includes an entrance from 76th Street and an entrance from Patterson Avenue. It includes both. Part of the cost increase. The driveway from the school to 76th Street is included here at $376,000. And that does not include the wetland mitigation and the bridging and the widening of 76th Street. So there's allowances in here for that. We hope they're too high.
Maybe a question for Sarah, but where are we getting this extra $9 million from?
Well, that is the topic for September and October's board meetings. We are going to bring to you all of the remaining projects in the bond. We have a fair amount that are ready, that are unbid, undone, undesigned, and untouched. We're going to bring all of that to you and present it to you and talk about making some decisions of what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. These are the two stellar projects of this bond. These were the biggies right up front in bold letters, the Cal Community Center and the new Dutton Elementary. So we're going to look at everything else and with a new light come September and talk about what we want to do.
And that, if I can interject, is why I was grabbing for the mic. And talking to some superintendent colleagues across the state, when we see a price escalation in 5 or 10% range, maybe we can do some things to bring the cost in line. When you are in an inflationary environment, which I'm sure people understand in terms of gas and food, and you are in a supply chain issue that are pushing prices north of 25 to 40%, what I'm seeing is a lot of districts are saying there's no cute math that you can do to this. So you have to make a conscious choice of what you're going to do without, whether that's in that project or other projects. You're going to have to make a conscious choice if you're going to go out to your community at some other point for things that you hold of value but you cannot do. So it will take us some time, to pull that together and look at it, but we feel like at this point, we do hope that it gets better, but with the delays that we've had, that didn't allow us to lock in things, and the timelines as well as the costs got extended. And regardless of how we feel, when we pass a bond, we have a definitive timeline in which the entire project must be completed. So the longer we wait, the more we run at risk of not completing it as required when you go out and bond for a project. So what I'm hearing from superintendents is several of them have just said, we were renovating 4 schools and we're only going to renovate 2 because you can't get cute and save 40%. This is what you're not going to do moving forward. So we're going to have some interesting conversations in a few months. We want to allow some of the process to get the shovels in the ground because we don't want to have some other unforeseen surprises out there that could come up. And so trying to speculate or guess at it today will be truly wild-eyed speculation that will be better informed in a couple months.
Our biggest speculation right now is that getting it in the ground. Once we get the hole in the ground and we know the ground is good and we know the ground is safe to move on, we're a lot more comfortable with our pricing and moving and locking in. So.
And then just from an overall bond program with this bid pack included and the community center, where does that leave us from overall bond?
I don't have that number.
I don't.
Or maybe what's remaining, I guess.
I don't have that number, and that's going to be part of our research and work to do to figure out what that's going to look like. And but we felt that of everything that we are aware of, the biggest 2 projects we think that we can handle, but it means that a lot of other projects that were smaller, but things that we value will we'll have to really think about, can we do it? And if so, how? And what does that look like moving forward? So as we get a little deeper into this, we'll have a better idea of what the potential extra monies are.
Brittany?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brittany.
So I appreciate cautious optimism, Matt. I am also a cautiously optimistic person. But I'm also hearing we can't do cautiously optimistic math. And so I will be clear, like I'm concerned about digging a hole and getting going. And I understand that we need that information. And I'm also concerned about what that means if we do dig that hole and we do run into other problems and now we've already spent that money. Like, what do we do then? Not a worst case scenario person, but like.
Yeah, nope. The good news is that what's in here is prepared for finding an old farm structure, for finding an old oil tank, for finding, no, not for finding Jimmy Hoffa. That would be really bad. That type of thing. We're prepared to find something.
Okay.
Everyone, to the best of our knowledge, looking back at the records of that property, there should be nothing there. There should be nothing. And I've worked on a couple projects where there should have been nothing and there was something. So
Okay.
we're cautiously optimistic, but we're prepared for that. That's in here.
Okay.
And if I can add to that, I think part of our expression to the board is that right now we need to focus on these two projects and these two projects only, moving with the mindset that all other projects may not make the cut. And maybe we just do these two projects to the best of our ability. So we're other things that we think, crossing our fingers, cautiously optimistic. Maybe there's an extra couple 100,000 or a couple million, and we can start prioritizing what we can do with what's available. But we feel pretty confident that we can move forward with these two if we're operating under the understanding that everything else will have to be put on hold until we have a better idea, so that at least we can finish these two and not even really focus and maybe not mislead people to think, oh, and we're going to do this and this and this. It could be in the worst case scenario, these are the only two we can do and that's it. That would be the worst case scenario. And we think that there's money enough to do that in the worst case scenario, if that helps.
It does. Thank you. And my follow-up question to that will be, I'm sure you've run through a number of if-then scenarios. And so I am curious about what is your most realistic number where you think this is going to land?
Nope. I don't have one. I have some good cautious optimism, but there are way too many variables right now for me to hold on to any kind of good number and share it. Sorry. Coming out of the last board meeting, we did indicate that all other projects are on hold unless we've committed to it and we have it in progress. So we're just wrapping up a number of things that we just had open. They were smaller ones. We're finishing those and clearing them out, and nothing else starts at this point.
Tim?
I guess to your point, Brittany, it's what does all this look like? What are we going to give up to be able to finish these two bond projects that may be hard decisions to make? So,
Any additional questions for Mr. Hess or Dr. Martin on this? All right, thank you. We'll let you just scoot right into the 23-24 school bus purchase.
Okay. Yes, that is 2023, 2024. We normally approach this subject in March. However, as we look at the replacement cycle, we are currently recommending the purchase of 3 new 2023 77 passenger buses at $127,166 each. This is a significant increase over the price that we paid for the 22 buses that we are just getting in delivery now. The purchase of these 3 buses will continue to bring the bus the fleet up to date, and maintain a safe, efficient, and reliable fleet for transporting our students. All 3 major manufacturers, Thomas, International, and Bluebird, have indicated additional price increases at 5% at quarterly intervals. over the next 2 quarters, so October 1st and what looks like December 1st, are telegraphed out and head for 5% increases. And we're looking at the potential, at least Thomas has shared with us, that there are 2 more 5% increases coming in the spring. So at this point, if we can get these buses on order now, not paid for, just on order, they will be delivered in June or July of 2023. So about a little under a year from now, we will save just about $39,200 against a purchase later on in the year. They are cancelable up to about March 15th, and we will be very aware of where we stand financially and react accordingly before that time, so that we can, either cancel the order altogether or lower it or change it, do whatever we have to do. There was a question in the years past. We have purchased quite a few leased buses that have come off of lease. We buy them used, about a year old. They're in excellent condition. Because of these cost increases for new, that also translates into new leases. There are almost 0 leased buses available for sale on the used market this year. So that availability has dried up from our vendors. So we don't have that option. I wish we did.
2 quick things. What are the ages of the buses that we will be retiring then?
They will be 13 and 14 years old by that time. 14 years old, pardon me.
Gotcha. And this is money that has been earmarked, correct? Is it within the budget, Sarah, that was?
This is actually slightly above budget.
Slightly above.
Over the budget we have right now. That's why we're going to be watching that situation very closely. But we'd like to get 3 on order just in case.
But March is the date to cancel by.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, and if I can add a little bit, last week talking to another superintendent who is in the same, we were lamenting because their vendor told them to expect between 5 and 15 in increase, and at that case he was looking at up to 30,000 per bus additionally. So he's actually going through the same process we are, saying we need to at least get our order in early and try to lock in that price. It is a wild inflationary period that in some cases is exacerbated by the limited availability of parts and other things to get the buses. So it's a challenge.
Jason?
And can you remind me what the budget was for the buses?
300,000.
Okay.
There is some information to be added that will update the current fleet statistics, and we will have that for when this goes to vote next month. We'll have that out in advance.
So just from a budgetary standpoint, did we have some already for this coming year, and this is going to hit that next year's budget, right? This is the 23-24 budget. Do we have a 22-23 budget for buses? And
that's what's being delivered.
That's what's okay.
Delivered in July.
Okay, so that went on this budget. Okay, last budget or this budget?
And just to follow up, as with before, when we purchased these buses, you'd talked about ways that we could make some money back off of the buses that we were getting rid of. Is a 13 or 14-year-old bus possible to get money out of?
You
No.
get a couple grand.
Okay.
We're still looking at better options. There is a interesting market for them in South America. We just need to hook up with the right people to sell. Most of the time, they're simply bought for the transmission, and everything else goes in the grinder. So.
Tim?
So just to be clear too, we talked about in committee about the price. We're not going to pay more, obviously, but if the price goes down for some reason, we're going to pay.
Correct. Worst case scenario, if the price goes down and they want to charge us this, we have until March to cancel it. So.
Jason had another question.
Just, last one from me. Is there any sort of deposit that's going to be required to hold these? Okay.
Zero down. Sound like a car dealer there.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Are you
Zero
selling
down, 12 months.
Are you selling these or what?
No.
I mean,
Anything else? Right. Thank you very much.
That'll be back in September.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to offer a quick reminder, if anyone is signing up for public comment, to please have these cards turned in back in the corner there, and we'll get those to follow our board and superintendent reports. We will move to 7A, Curriculum and Learning Committee. Jason?
the Curriculum and Learning Committee met on August 1st, 2022 at 7:30 a.m. Ms. Perkowski provided an overview of the student handbook policy changes for each building from the March 29, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. Dr. Trober and teacher representatives from the high school social studies department provided an overview of the curriculum review process, the pilot of different curriculum options, student feedback, and their recommendation to the board for a vote at the August 8, 2022 board meeting, aka this meeting. Again, thank you, teachers, for your early arrival on Monday morning. Ms. Dubison provided an overview of the E3 grant, defined as a program located in a school or on school grounds that provides on-site comprehensive mental health services from mild to moderate severity of need. It includes referrals, tracking, and follow-up throughout the year with signed agreements with the host school and or local school district and Arbor Circle. These services will be available beginning this fall in Caledonia. Dr. Martin and Mr. Kingsbury shared updates from the Finance and Operations Committee, which will meet on August 4th. The meeting adjourned at 9:05. The next Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting will be held on September 13th, 2022 at 7:30 a.m.
Thank you. Are there any questions for that committee? Okay, we'll move on to Finance and Operations Committee. Tim?
Finance and Operations Committee meeting was held on August 4th, 2022. The meeting was called to order at 7:32 with 2 members from the public present. Mr. Hess presented the Dutton Elementary Bid Pack 2. Bid opening was held on July 7, 2022, followed by a period of post-bid interviews, negotiation, discussion, and value engineering commitments seeking to align the project closer to the stated budget. Many of the bids submitted carried a 15 or 30-day expiration. However, all vendors have agreed to hold proposals through the Board of Education meeting this Monday today. Crispin Construction, Plant Moran Cressa, and District Administration are recommending the motion to approve Crispin Construction to enter into contracts for the project as they are finalized in the post-bid consideration. Estimated construction cost for Bid Pack 2 is $26,384,000. Bid Pack 1 approved by the board on March 21, 2022 for the precast concrete structural components of the project have an approved cost of $26,768,600. In this project, there are $1,238,724 reserve dollars for contingency, leading the total project estimated cost to be $30,299,444. Remaining bond work will be discussed in the September-October board meeting timeframe. An update on current district property was discussed, as well as a potential to purchase a piece of property adjacent to one of our schools was brought up for discussion with the committee. Mr. Hess presented the 23-24 school bus purchase proposal that was going to be to the board a little earlier than usual, as prices continue to rise for school buses and the lead times to acquire is much longer than we have seen in the past. This will be discussed at this Monday, which is today. Wage enhancements to the transportation contract were discussed in response to the market and the challenge in not only acquiring but maintaining our bus drivers. Ms. Perkowski and Dr. Trober provided an update from the Curriculum and Learning Committee, and a time of discussion ensued. Dr. Martin finished up with the superintendent update. The meeting adjourned at 8:47 a.m. The next Finance and Operations Committee is scheduled for Thursday, September 8 at 7:30.
Thank you. Are there any questions for that committee? All right, and do we have anything for board reports?
I'll just say as from a board member's perspective, the curriculum process review for me seemed a bit difficult. Having to drive in to view the textbooks was difficult to be able to give it a full review. I think having the links to the supplemental web-based material would have been nice to have earlier. I think if the publishers are going to push back on this, they have to understand that this creates a bit of concern to board members, especially in the light of what may be in the curriculum or may not be in the curriculum. So I just wanted to share my opinion and thoughts with my fellow trustees, or maybe an improvement in the process moving forward.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I do appreciate that we were given a link based on talking to Dr.
Can you pull your microphone down just a hair? Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry. I realized that the publishers took a leap of faith because we could have done whatever we wanted with that information. So I realized there's copyrights for a reason. I do appreciate the extra effort that everyone made.
Jason.
So I just wanted to make a point of clarification that maybe is a topic that we have to address now in policy committee, because our policy states that only the student textbooks would be for review, not the teacher editions, which was what the links provided. So we went above and beyond our policy by having the teacher editions available. So maybe that's a conversation for the policy committee, but again, I just wanted to point, we did go above and beyond the policy, and the things that were held back were just those online teacher editions. So.
All right, thank you. Just so the board is aware, the Adopt a Road cleanup is finished for the summer, so we're all good there. And then please write down on your calendars for Thursday, August 25th, which is our football concession night. Got that, Daryl? Okay. All right, superintendent report.
Yes, thank you. For the parents in the audience and for everyone, we are getting close to that time. First day of school is August 23rd. So our staff is getting very busy trying to get ready for our students. Our staff will start returning during the week of August 15th. So that is actually next week for various level of orientations, if they are new teachers or new to our district, or professional development. Thanks to our teachers, we were able to negotiate a contract with 2 additional PD days on the front end. That's been kind of something that we've been working towards because we want to make sure that we invest in our teachers and give them the time to do everything they need to get ready, and maybe a little less rushed than in the past. So we're looking forward to our teachers and our students coming back over the next couple weeks. Parents, we have various schedules, varying schedules in terms of open houses that will begin the week of the 15th. Many of them will be on Thursday the 18th, but please look and visit our website or contact your child's building for the specifics on the open house opportunities for your child. As we get prepared, and this weekend, I think I probably saw about 7 or 8 news articles from across the country, just the impending shortages that we see. And so kudos to our HR department, our building administrators, our curriculum department, because we have a lot of parts, but quite honestly, we're in pretty good shape. I think part of that is we worked hard to negotiate a fair contract with our teaching staff to make sure that they are paid competitively. Even though we weren't required, we did step up and provide additional pay for all of our hourly workers as well, and working with the transportation department to make sure that they have competitive compensation. And so right now, I think I've heard that we're about 2 bus drivers short as of today, still 2 weeks out. So believe it or not, that's in pretty good shape. Some of the reports that we're seeing around the region and around the country. Staffing levels, we are in pretty good shape. I think we still have a little bit more work to do, hiring a few teachers, but 2 weeks out, I'm feeling pretty good considering the challenges we're seeing. But, we're not done. There's more work to do. I also want to say thank you to Ms. Perkowski. For those who are unaware, She will be leaving us, moving on to a new school district. We could not find a better person to hire right before the actual pandemic hit. And she led us through with grace, with positive spirit and attitude that was infectious. She has been an outstanding mentor to a lot of our building administrators. This was clearly an opportunity that she could not turn down, but we just wanted to officially or publicly say thank you for serving our district so well over the past 2.5 years and guiding us through some very challenging, tumultuous times as it relates to how to educate and educate well during a pandemic. So with that being said, that concludes my comments for this evening.
Yep.
Oh, I was going to give Mr. Hess another opportunity for good news.
Thank you.
So I
Thank you.
apologize.
I like to steal some of the good news here and there. This past Friday, we had final occupancy inspections for both Duncan Lake and Craft Meadows. And those projects are officially closed with the state of Michigan. So
That is great news. Thank you. And thank you very much for being here with us over the last 2+ years. We do wish you all the best, and we appreciate the time that you've put in, and we hope that you don't have anything to deal with like we've dealt with for the last couple of years here. So we do wish you the best. Thank you. All right, at this point in time, we are going to move on to our public comment section. All cards should be turned in at that time. You do have the 3 minutes. There will be a timer that starts for that. I'm going to start with Cheryl. She did have to leave, so I will follow up with her individually to make sure if there was anything we could address. Janet?
Good evening. My name is Janet Thatcher, and my family lives here in Caledonia. First of all, I want to take a moment to personally thank all of the board members and the administrators that are present. I'm probably more than most understand the challenges in serving in education currently. I want to thank each and every one of you for the time and the effort you put forth for the students in this community. So thank you. I also know that there is some concern about the current curriculum, and I want to offer some insight about some things, including the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you accept the idea that public education should, amongst other things, prepare young people for the future, for future employment in the general economy, then I suggest that we all stop viewing DEI in a negative manner and understand the concept better. Why? Because it's firmly embedded in our corporate world. Thriving, growing companies have figured out a long time ago that diversity in the company's employment practices is necessary for economic reasons. You cannot appeal to a diverse customer base if your staff is from a narrow demographic background. Do you want proof of this? Consider 5 US-based companies that currently exist: Walmart, Amazon, Apple, CVS, and Exxon. These companies collectively employ over 4 million people and generate $1.7 trillion in annual revenue. There's one thing that each of these companies have in common with each other and thousands of other companies in this country. All of them have active diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and continually monitor DEI metrics. Many of our students are going to enter the corporate world when they graduate from Caledonia with companies that will not tolerate an employee being dismissive of DEI's importance. Students can learn this concept now, or they can learn it in their working years. But in one way or another, they will encounter it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Bob and Chris.
Good evening, everybody. For more than a month, my wife and I have used your public review process to evaluate the proposed Savas curriculum. On January 20th, we July 20th, we gave the board a detailed written review of significant problems with information bias, accuracy, and pushing students to become social activists long before they've got enough material to do it. We also told you that Savas CEO has stated, and quote, culturally responsive learning must be woven into everything we do, the curriculum we build, the PD we provide, and so forth. So culturally responsive learning is formed out of CRT and advanced by Gloria Ladson Billings, as you mentioned, right? The author of CRT in Education, and she just recently hosted an event called, or was a provider of a seminar called 2022 CRT Summer School, Everyday CRT in K-12 Education. So, I mean, honestly, if we want to embrace it, that's fine, as long as everybody owns up to it and we know what we're getting into. She obviously says we should, that's fine. We just can't say that we don't have CRT in our school and yet put it into our school. She and other like-minded advocates of race and gender theory are on the Culturally Responsive Advisory Board for Savas, which the CEO said they were going to use to try to infuse in everything that they did. So it's hard to believe that it doesn't make its way into the curriculum. We've been trying to initiate open and honest discussions about this and what it means for our teachers, our students, and the community. Last week at a public reviewed committee meeting, board member Isaac claimed that criticism of that curriculum was politically motivated. Since we are the ones who presented criticism of this content, she was talking about us. And she doesn't know anything about us or what our motivations are. You're the one who made it political by saying this, and we deserve an apology. We didn't do this tedious work because we had political agenda or enjoyed dissension among our community. I hate doing this stuff. It's not what I enjoy doing. We did it because we felt the moral responsibility to ensure that our students are taught free from the racist indoctrination my son experienced by a former Caledonia teacher who happens to be in this room. Also, at a last week's meeting, the superintendent, one of the administrators, and the same board member claimed that any debate on the content of the curriculum was somehow attacking teachers. This can't be further from the truth. We appreciate everything they've done to evaluate the curriculum, and you know, we're glad that they're engaged in it. This was basically pointed at both us and sitting board member Morris. It's unacceptable. Understand, anyone who claims that simple disagreement over critical school issues rather than teachers, that we're attacking teachers, that's politically motivated in itself. Our children graduated from Caledonia. We know they're great teachers here. We want to ensure that our teachers get the best curriculum possible and they have the best chance for successfully educating our students without indoctrination. Providing updated learning materials that are user-friendly for teachers and students alike is an awesome goal, and the teachers are best to assess this, so we have no issues with that. But if I were a teacher, I'd be upset to find out the administration was knowingly giving me curriculum infused with racist ideologies. So although only one board member has expressed any interest in talking to us, we're always available to answer your questions, and for now we request that you still vote no on this material until you can find material that doesn't have this in it.
That's okay now? We both were listed on there. A gentleman who is running for school board and is therefore seeking the board and teachers' votes has apparently sent you a critique of our review. His letter is full of assumptions and lies, I guess based on the belief that he can read our minds. He also makes straw man arguments, claiming we meant something that we did not, and then argues against his made-up premise. For a man who claimed just last month at this board meeting to be so educated, he should be aware that this is very poor debate technique. The reality is there were many concerns about how the material is being presented in the textbooks, but way too many to send in an email review that had to be written quickly as you were supposed to vote on this last month. We expected the board members to reach out to us for clarity, but of course you didn't do that. Instead, Josh Trauber came in during my review process and harassed me and would not allow me to take photos that I could have used as an examples to give the board to make the connections I was making. I hope you all have enough critical thinking skills to know when you're being politically manipulated. If you want to understand where we're coming from, ask us. And by the way, I have been studying this topic, things like DEI, CRT, etc., for several years now, and I do not get my sources off social media as the superintendent suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, we have James.
Our family moved to Caledonia in 2003. Our first full day in town was the 4th of July, so we walked up the hill to the park. We heard music, we ate hot dogs, we met people. As we walked back, we met a man pushing a bicycle. His kids had run on ahead. He said, "Are you the new people down on Costner? I was supposed to find you and invite you to our cookout." As we sat outside our house that night, watching the fireworks with other neighbors, we knew we had found home. Fall came. Our kids started school. They made friends. Their teachers welcomed them. For 8 years, we were blessed by the expertise and kindness of Caledonia school teachers. These teachers, staff, and administrators are some of the best people on earth. In this room in May, I heard a Caledonian who wants to represent me in Lansing say, "Our schools are full of extreme leftist ideology that promotes racism." Last month, and tonight, I heard another Caledonian say these textbooks are loaded with critical race theory. I do regard statements like these as slurs against the character or competence or both of our teachers and administrators who select these materials and use them, and against you, our school board trustees. When I asked the person who spoke against the textbooks to show me evidence, he said the evidence was in a letter that had been sent to you. So I exercised my FOIA right to obtain a copy of that letter. I have emailed to you my assessment of their letter. You can share it with anyone who asks you. It was also posted at verbasparsa.org, my blog site, as of 7 p.m. tonight. I think Tim Morris might find the content reassuring. There's about 7,000 words of content. My finding, the review does not support any of their complaints. As I said here in July, these are good, unbiased textbooks in which we have seen no evidence of CRT. Where do these complaints come from? The world around us is changing fast. Change makes us anxious and fearful. We don't all see all the changes in the same light, so there's confusion. Fear and confusion can turn into anger and strife. Bad actors globally and nationally deliberately yank our chains to create instability so they can grab power. They have direct channels of communication into our homes 24/7. They want us to attack each other. We must not. We must rediscover neighborly generosity and humility. We must recognize when our imaginings turn dark and when we begin to view our friends and neighbors, including our teachers, with suspicion and hostility, and ask ourselves, why? We must speak and act out of love. When love falters, we must follow established laws and protocols. All Caledonia parents want the best for their children. So do Caledonia teachers. I believe everyone in this room does too. And I believe you do. Thank you all for your good work to that end.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move forward to 9, which are our action items. 9A, which is student handbooks.
I move that the board accept the student handbooks as presented.
Second.
Are there any further questions, comments on the student handbook? All right, could we please have roll call?
Asper, yes. Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Isich.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Seydu.
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 9B, high school social studies textbook adoption.
I move that the board approve the following high school social studies textbooks from Savas Products as presented: Geography, World History, U.S. History, Economics, Government, Advanced Placement Psychology, and Advanced Placement Sociology.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Tim?
I trust the teachers to do the right thing with this curriculum. I don't trust the curriculum. My bottom line, that's why I'll be voting no.
Any other comments, questions on the?
So I guess So you don't think our teachers are clever enough or smart enough or understand enough to get by that? I mean, I guess I'm
actually do.
confused.
It's the
Please, at this time, this is a board discussion. Thank you very much.
I would never charge the teachers of having to go look at all the links that the students are going to look at. So that is the crux of where I stand on this. I think we could have used more time in this process or had the information provided to us a little sooner. I know the publisher was a roadblock in this. It wasn't necessarily our administration. But when you look at all the links and all the opportunities, you just don't have enough time to look at what all this is, and I wouldn't expect the teachers to do that either.
I mean, we had 75 plus years of experience of teachers that went through months of reviewing the curriculum, right? So I have full faith and trust in all of those teachers, all of the administrators that did this, and you know, I have full faith and trust that they're going to pick the right curriculum for us, right? And I don't see how voting no means you can trust them. Like, if you don't trust them, we should probably get rid of them.
70 years ago, there weren't thousands of web links and taking you to fact checkers. I trust the teachers. I don't trust the curriculum.
But those are available with or without the books. That
Right,
could send
like-
somebody to someplace they don't want to be. I mean, without this or any other curriculum.
So if we
those
don't-
links are always.
But we're paying for this.
But so if we don't adopt this one, we have what we have, which is books that end in the Clinton administration. And so the teachers are going to have to find some stuff, links and websites, and students are going to go to links and websites that are even less vetted than a curriculum that we might adopt here. And that's going to be a better situation than taking what we have here that was unanimously selected by people with a wealth of experience.
No, I said I think we should have a curriculum. We shouldn't go without curriculum, but we're moving from books to no structure over that period of time to now having a curriculum opportunity, which is different. It's different how we're delivering the curriculum. So we didn't have web links in 2005, and we didn't have NPR fact checkers as a resource that is, who knows what our kids are going to be looking at. So.
And I'm not comparing to 2005. I'm comparing to, if we vote no, we have no new resource. We are left with what we have, which was what was adopted in 2005 or 1990s for some of it. They're being supplemented right now with links by the teachers, by other things, by YouTube, by whatever. That are you wanting to vet all of those too? I mean, we don't have the pieces in place to have a comprehensive curriculum. So if we vote no, we're left with that now, right? If we vote yes, we have something again that was unanimously selected, right? So if we vote no, great. You want to have a curriculum? Where do we go?
Part of the thing that I brought up
Straight ahead, just straight ahead into it.
Part of the thing that I brought up in the finance committee meeting was that I was hoping you would share your concerns with the board prior to the board meeting. So if there was something that we should know about that would hold up our teachers getting the resources that they've been begging for, that you would share it. And I didn't get anything. I don't know if anyone else did. So that's kind of frustrating on my end.
This is public discussion, not committee discussion.
I know. We
So
discussed this
we
in
are to
the-
discuss this in public, not in
Yeah.
private. So
I realize that, but I'm saying I had hoped if you found things that were concerning, you would share them with us so the rest of us could make an informed
I did
decision.
share them with you.
I don't have any email from you other than
What did
asking
we-
about ISBN numbers.
I'm not going to put the toothpaste back in the bottle, okay? I've made my decision.
That's fine.
I've spent a lot of time working on this too.
Okay.
So we'll see where it falls, and I can sleep at night. So
Are there any other questions or comments, concerns before we take roll call? Okay. All right. We'll move forward with roll call, please.
Asper, yes. Barbara Garcia,
Yes.
Isich,
Yes.
Morris,
No.
Sadu,
Absolutely yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 9C, which is Dutton Elementary Bid Pack 2.
Move that the board approve Chrisman Construction, Inc. to enter into final negotiations and sign contracts with firms and contractors for the 2020 bond project at Dutton Elementary School.
We have a second.
I'll second, sorry.
Any other questions on that? Comments? No? Can I please have roll call?
Asper, yes. Barbara Garcia,
Yes.
Isich,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Sadu,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. This time, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I thank our community members that did choose to review some curriculum, as well as thanking all of our teachers and our administrators for the work on all the things we've been on tonight. If I could have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night.